Hi, welcome to Wallflowers. Today I wanted to do a breakdown on how I cheaply and most affordably try to buy produce, potatoes, beetroots, vegetables, peppers, go foraging for certain things that we can use in the pantry and use for food and meals and desserts, and what we try to grow in the garden. So I'm going to today make some pickled beetroot with onion, which is one of my husband's favourites. We're going to make some raspberry jam. We're going to make rose hip syrup, and we're also going to prepare potatoes for canning for storing on the pantry shelf that's ready to use when we want them. So firstly we're going to make some pickled beetroot with onion. So I began by peeling the beetroot, taking the stalks off, and I kept them aside and I used them in a separate meal. We never waste the stalks of beets. You just chop them and bring them to a boil like you would spinach, cabbage, anything else, and they soften up. You can keep them in a Ziploc bag and put them in your freezer and add them to stews or whatever. Lots of nutrients in them, and a waste of food if you're just throwing them away in the compost or in the bin itself. So yeah, take the stems off, peel them, slice them, put them in a pan of water, bring them to the boil. When we take them off the boil and take the beetroots out, we don't waste the water, we drain that, keep that to one side. When we come to make the pickling mixture, we use the beetroot water that it's boiled in, add vinegar and add sugar, heat the jars up, add the, by this time we've actually cubed the beetroot along with tiny cubes of onion, add the pickling mixture, clean the top of the jar, and those are ready for canning then. I'll include some photographs. So secondly, I decided to make some raspberry jam, as the raspberry bushes in the garden were looking brilliant. So, you know, they were heavy, they were hanging over with that much fruit on. Unfortunately, not all of it was desirable, shall we say, but I got enough of it. I'll show you a picture in a minute with some strawberries in. Earlier in the week, a couple of days before, I'd been for a forage, and we managed just a couple of handfuls of blackberries. So I put those in with the raspberries, and I managed to pick two strawberries from the garden this morning. So I sliced and cubed those and put them in. We made a delicious raspberry jam. We put equal amounts of the fruit to the sugar, and I didn't even put water in it. I just kept stirring and the juices of it all came out. I managed a nice size, medium sized jar and a little conserve jar size, so that should either be a little treat for someone or just a breakfast serving. But either way, I'm quite happy with that, and hopefully as I get more raspberries now I can make another jar each time, so that'll be great. And then the next thing I decided to prepare for the pantry was some potatoes um, in jars for canning again. So recently, as we've been bargain hunting and looking for decent prices on food, we've been able to buy 25 kilo sacks of potatoes for £5. And sometimes we haven't managed to get to the bottom of it quickly enough and they've sprouted. So with the last sack that we got, they were a nice red potato, I'm not too sure of the name right now, and I decided to plant them up too in 10 to 20 litre black tubs with compost, and I've now got a line of those growing in the polytunnel now, and hopefully they'll either be Christmas Day potatoes or just thereafter, somewhere between December and January. So at least that's a bonus. They haven't completely gone to waste. They haven't, you know, had to go in the landfill or had to be thrown away. So yeah, so we really did like those sacks of spuds. So we went back again. We got another one. This time I think each time I'm making a meal now, I shall peel twice the quantity and do a few jars for the shelf, and therefore they're not going to sprout on the bottom because we can't eat them quickly enough. And you know, I'm limited to how many I can actually plant outside for the space, because I don't want to grow the potatoes outside for the winter because they'll more than likely rot. So I'm going to use that space in a polytunnel, but it's not a very big polytunnel, so I will be limited to an extent. But I'll do the best I can. Yes, so that's the potatoes. I'll show you a couple of pictures of that now. And lastly but not least, the rosehip syrup. So we went on a forage a couple of days ago and I saw lots of lovely rose hips. So I've never made rose hip syrup before, but I thought, you know, I'm going to try it this time. So I brought a bag back. I wasn't sure of how much weight I'd taken, and I think I had 350 grams of the rose hips. So I quickly looked and googled and got a recipe up. And to that I put 200 grams of caster sugar, and a litre and a half of water. Brought that to a medium heat and kept stirring it, and eventually brought it to a sit of about 10 minutes. And then eventually I brought it up to a good boil, kept it at that boil for 3 minutes, then let it simmer again for a further 10, waited for it to cool down. I then placed a mesh what would you call it, drainer over a jug, and I also placed in some muslin doubled over, then proceeded to pour over the rose hip syrup, still with the hairs in at this point. Man, this is why I'm so cautious of using the mesh and the muslin to strain it, because obviously those hairs in the rose hips are what we used to call itchy buds, and we used to throw down each other's tops and things when we were small. We might laugh now, but we weren't laughing then because they did itch. But yeah, so we kind of double strain it. You can actually do the process twice to make sure there aren't any, because it's not something you want in your throat. Anyway, when I was pleased with that, I'd drained it as such, you know, I had it through the mesh and had it through the muslin. I let it cool in a jug, and then decanted into 2 bottles. It tastes really nice. It is a mild flavour, sweet and sugary, and you can taste the rose hip fruit in it. What I have learned is there is more vitamin C in the rose hips than there is in your basic lemon and orange. And apparently during the war, the Germans refused to let the English buy the fresh fruit that was coming through their services, and our English government were recommending us to actually go out and in our own gardens where we were growing the roses to actually pick the rose hips, and to make our own rose hip syrups. You don't hear many people making them these days, and that's why I've tried it today. I'm quite happy with the quantity that I've got, and I'm sure it's something I'll do again. I will share those pictures with you, but thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.